If you have been joining Brighton Youth for a while now, you will realize that over here on the preaching, right, we try to cover a wide range of topics. We will talk about emotional topics, about identity, self-esteem, and relationships. We will talk about developmental topics, right? We just concluded a leadership series. We will talk about EQ. We will talk about money management. Okay, we will even talk about societal issues, right? We talk about sex, how society views sex. We talk about social media and the influences. We will even talk about LGBT. Okay, and we do this because we believe that the Christian faith is not a compartment in our life, right? It's not just some pocket or compartment in our life, but it is a lens through which we look at all things around us. Okay, and every year, right before Easter weekend, we will talk about logical topics, right? Things that will require us to use brain, okay, or what we call apologetics. Come, everybody say this together. Apologetics. Okay, apologetics does not mean, okay, this font a bit dark, okay? Apologetics does not mean you say sorry to people, apologize. But the word apologetics means speaking in defense, right? Or in short, defending. So whenever we talk about a Christian apologetics, we are talking about defending the Christian faith. Okay, and today, 2 weeks before we celebrate Easter, like what Brother Chiming shared just now, we are starting on a brand new series called FAQ. Okay, for those of you who might not be familiar, FAQ stands for Frequently Asked Questions. Okay, and it's important, right? It's important for us to ask questions. In fact, in the Sec 1 in the younger Sec 1, Sec 3 cell group, they always ask me very interesting questions. Like, Sec 2, this boy always asking me, he wants to be an Orthodox Christian. So he'll ask me what's the difference, and I will answer him. Right? And I answer him patiently because I want to encourage people to ask questions. Next time when BB code is out, I will encourage it, right, or him or her, to ask questions. Okay, and it's the same for Christianity. Okay, the more questions we ask about our faith, the more we'll be able to understand it. Okay, we shouldn't think that our Christian faith is just a spiritual encounter with God. It is not just an emotional experience. Okay, but our Christian faith is a logical decision. Okay, why is this important? Because today it's very common for people to assume that to be a Christian, you need to throw logic out the window. Okay, today it's very common for people to assume that to be a Christian, you have to throw logic out the window. Okay, take this meme for example. Okay, this meme, I took it from some 80s Facebook group. 3 things your kid doesn't need. Sunday school, there's most of you, right? Young girls from Sunday school. Baptism, threats of hell. 3 things your kid does need. Science, common sense, critical thinking. Right? And the obvious and indirect message is that Christians don't care about science and they obviously do not have common sense or critical thinking. Or how about this meme? Next. Okay, it's taken from another 80s website, Facebook group as well. Religion is blind leading the blind, leading the blind, leading the blind. Right? If this is true, then I'm the guy in front now, right? I'm the guy in front leading all of you. Right? And what I want to do in this series, okay, is to get all of us to exercise critical thinking. Okay, to think for yourself, okay, what your Christian faith is about. Okay, I love what the late Ravi Zachariah, he says in his ministry. He says that his work is to help thinkers believe and believers think. Okay, help thinkers to believe in God and to help believers to think. Okay, I love it. Okay, and I hope that this series will enable the Christian faith, okay, to occupy a bigger space in your mind and consequently a bigger place in your heart. Okay, there are many questions that people have asked about Christianity, but for this series, I have shortlisted 3 big questions that are not so straightforward. Okay, number 1, who made God? Number 2, who wrote the Bible? And number 3, who goes to hell? Okay, and for the third part in this series, who goes to hell, I have invited our ex-adult leader, Sheng Yu, to come and speak to us. Okay, firstly, because he is very knowledgeable, right, in the areas of apologetics. And secondly, that Saturday, 9th of April, is my wedding anniversary. Right? I will still be here for service, but that week I'll be off so that I can celebrate with Serene before BB Cole comes along. Right? And so today, to kickstart, I want to explore the question, who made God? Okay, and the thinking behind this question, who made God, is straightforward, right? Right, like the teaser video we saw just now. If everything was created by God, then who created God? Does it sound like a logical question to you? Right, it seems like a very simple question, right? It's like almost, okay. But there is a lot more to it than meets the eye. Okay, so today I just want to share with you three ways, that you can do to approach this question, who made God? Are you guys ready? Ready? Okay, and first one is this, okay, you need to recognize logical fallacies. Okay, you need to recognize logical fallacies. As you can see, today's note, there's no Bible verse, right? So it's going to be understanding the ideas. Okay, what is a fallacy? Okay, what is the word fallacy? Okay, we start off with a simple definition of fallacy. Okay, fallacy. Yes. Can you see? Okay, right? Okay, a fallacy is a use of invalid or wrong reasoning. Okay, it is an idea which many people believe to be true, but which is in fact false because it is based on incorrect reasoning. Can you understand? Never mind, I give you some examples. Okay, I give you some example. You tell me whether they are facts or fallacies. Is that okay? You tell me whether it's facts or fallacy. Okay, first one. Smoking causes lung cancer. Facts or fallacy? Facts, right? Obviously, right? Okay, second one. Drinking alcohol leads to liver damage. Facts or fallacy? Facts, right? I think you don't study triple science, you can understand this. Okay, the third one. Girls who wear crop top and hot pants are 小妹妹. Facts or fallacy? Who said fallacy? Only one. All say facts. Oh, you're living in which universe? Okay, last one. This one fun. Boys who pierce their ears, wear OBS shirt and slides are white peas. Facts or fallacies? I'm going to assume your thing is fallacy. Okay, immediately we think of a particular person, right, in SPL, right? We don't want to say okay, we can laugh, but we know, right? We understand the logic, right? Right? It doesn't mean that you pierce your ear, you wear OBS shirt, and slides means you're a YP. Or is it? Right? We understand, right? We understand the logic. Okay, now you appreciate, right, what is facts and fallacy. Okay, now you are ready to tackle the main question, okay? Who made God? Okay, do you think the question, who made God, is a logical question? Do you think it's a logical question? Okay, the reasoning behind this is that everything that have ever existed must have been created, correct? So this applies to God, right? If everything that has ever existed have been created, then surely this must apply to God. That's the reasoning behind it. But this is actually a logical fallacy. Okay, and it's not hard to see the incorrect reasoning. Okay, you guys can do it. Okay, so let me give you an illustration. If there is a God, and somebody had created God, let's say if the statement is true, then what happened? Who is that somebody now? It's God himself. Think about it. If there is a God, let's say there is a God, and he was created by somebody, who is bigger? That someone is bigger, is it? Right? And actually, the someone is God. Okay, we're not talking about Christian God. This is just we are trying reasoning over here. Right? We're trying to reason here, right? Appreciate the logic. Right? If there is a God, okay, this is Zeus, right? That's Zeus. Right? And somebody X created Zeus, then somebody becomes God, right? He's God himself. Right? This person maybe is just at most a demigod. But that begs the next question. Who created somebody? Right? So maybe you say, oh, there's a somebody too, right? Who created somebody. Then what happens now? There's somebody too, someone too, is God. Then what's the next question? Who created someone too? Right? So you realize that we fall into an infinite loop. Right? Or they call infinite regression, right? We fall into an infinite loop of questioning who made God. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Do you understand? Right? So, if you think about it, what made God or who made God is really an illogical question. Because God, by definition, cannot be created. Right? To ask the question, who made God, it is like asking, how does blue taste like? How does the blue taste like? Okay, or it's like asking, what is the name of Joshua Yap's wife? What's the name of Joshua Yap's wife? He's a bachelor, right? So to ask the question, what is the name of his wife, is a illogical question. Okay, so God by definition cannot be created. He simply exists. Are you guys still with me? Okay, it takes a while, but let's explore one more question. Since we're on the topic of logic, right? Okay, let's consider another question. Maybe you have heard this one before. Could God create a rock so heavy he could not lift it? Could God create a rock so heavy he cannot lift it? Okay, for those of you who have read the Bible, you know, right? There's a Bible, Jesus himself says, with God, all things are possible, meaning he's omnipotent, he's all-powerful, he can do all things. If he can do all things, then could God create such a rock? Okay, I want you all to think about it. Okay, I'll give you 1 minute. Okay, discuss with your neighbor beside you. Okay, yes or no? Okay, your 1 minute starts now. Okay, you're just going to discuss and decide yes or no to this question. Okay, 30 more seconds. Okay, 10 more seconds. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, how many of you say yes to this question? How many of you say yes? Okay, 1. How many of you say no? What? How many of you say I don't know? Then the rest are waiting for dinner now. Okay, I hope you can appreciate the trickiness of this question. Okay, I hope you can appreciate the trickiness. Okay, if you say yes, if God can create a rock so heavy that he cannot lift it, if he cannot lift the rock, then it means that he's not omnipotent, right? He cannot do all things. If the rock is too heavy for him to carry, it means that he can't do all things, right? On the other hand, if he cannot create such a rock, he is also not omnipotent. So either way, checkmate. Conclusion, he cannot do all things. Okay, and therefore the Bible is fake. Let's pray. If Bible fake, don't even need to pray. Let's go now. Actually, there is a logical fallacy, okay, to this conclusion. Okay, and it's not hard for you to understand this. Okay, let's address the simple question. Can God do all things? Yes and no lah. Right? There are at least 2 things that God cannot do. Okay, firstly, God cannot sin. Right? God cannot sin, right? Because God is holy. Okay, and secondly, God cannot do illogical things. Okay, God cannot do illogical things. Okay, why illogical things? For example, God cannot create a 2-sided triangle. Is 2-sided triangle possible? Right? God cannot draw a square circle. Is it possible? Okay, because it is illogical, right? So what the Bible is really saying is that God can do all things logically possible. Okay, let's try to understand this. Can God resurrect a dead man? Yes. Is it logically possible that God can resurrect a dead man? Is it scientifically possible? No, right? So you understand this, right? Right? It is not scientific. It is scientifically impossible to resurrect a dead man. But if God is a life giver, it is logically possible for him to resurrect a dead man. Is it possible for God to part the sea? Part the sea. Yes or no? Yes, because if he has created the universe and put in place a law of gravity, then it is logically possible for him to manipulate gravity. Right? So there's a difference between scientifically possibility and logical possibility. Now, could God create a rock so heavy he cannot lift it? Answer is no, because, okay, it's very simple. If God is an infinite being, right? If you think about God, infinity sign, right? If God is an infinite being, then the rock must be larger than him so that he cannot carry it. Can something be larger than infinity? No, right? Not logically possible. God cannot create someone or something that is larger than himself. Are you guys still with me? Okay, the good news is that this is the hardest of the 3 points. Right? This is the hardest of the 3 points, right? So we just need to understand, right, the difference between logical and scientific. Okay, and it's important for us to spot the incorrect assumption and reasoning behind all the arguments against God. Okay, let me say that again. It's important for us to spot all the incorrect reasoning and assumptions behind the argument against God. Okay, especially for the Christians, right? It's very easy to be so intimidated and scared by what people are saying. Okay, we don't have to be intimidated. Okay, but we do need to learn how to handle their objections. Okay, so to answer the question, who made God? The answer is nobody, right? He simply existed. Nobody created God. Okay, but it brings us to the next bigger question, right? How do I know that God exists? Right? How do I know that God exists? Okay, you might have heard the people saying that science has proven that God does not exist. Okay, so I thought I would talk a little bit, right, about science versus God. Okay, and the second point is this. Okay, we need to acknowledge the scientific limitations. Okay, we need to acknowledge scientific limitations. Okay, one of the reasons why we tend to think that there is a conflict between science and faith, okay, there's a conflict between science and God, is because we don't really understand what science is about. Okay, all of you study science, right? Since primary school, right? But what is science? Have you thought about it? What is science? Or you all just memorize V squared U squared 2AS? What is science? Okay, let me give you the definition for Cambridge Dictionary. Okay, from Cambridge Dictionary, science is a study of the structure and behavior of the physical world, especially by watching, measuring, and doing experiments and the development of theories. That's why you have to memorize a lot of definition to describe the result of these activities. Okay, notice the underlying phrase. Physical world and watching, measuring, and doing experiments. That's why we got science prac, right? A lot of you have to do science practical, right? Okay, and these underlying words actually tells us the limits, okay, of science. Okay, two things. Okay, there are two limits, okay, of science. Firstly, science is limited to knowing about our what world? Physical world. It's limited to knowing about our physical world. Okay, so imagine with me, guys, this rectangle is our physical universe, right? Our entire universe. Okay, since you all got a lot of space in your outline, okay, I want you all to draw a rectangle in your outline, right? And label it physical world. Okay, draw a rectangle. Okay, not too big, because you have to draw one more later. Okay, and just imagine, right, this rectangle is the physical world that we are living in. Okay, and we use science, okay, to help us understand our physical world. Okay, we use science to help us understand our physical world. Okay, for example, my favorite science, chemistry, right, helps us to understand matter. Right, matter, you all know matter, right? Matter at the atomic level, right? And we have biology to help us understand living creatures, right? All living organisms. Okay, but it's not just Earth. If you move away from Earth, we have astronomy Okay, to help us understand other bodies such as moons, stars, planets, okay, even galaxies, right, like Milky Way. Okay, I didn't put physics because I hate physics. Yeah. But here's the thing. If there is a God, will you agree that he does not belong to our physical world? Will you agree? That he does not stay within our physical world if there is a God. Okay, once again, I'm not just talking about the Christian God, right? Almost every religion in the world has this idea of heaven. Right? Almost every religion, if you study, has this idea of heaven where its God is staying at. So will you agree that this heaven is not a physical world, but a spiritual world? Okay, so I just want you guys to draw a bigger rectangle outside of your current rectangle, okay? Label it spiritual world. This means that if there is a God, okay, let's just assume if there is a God and there is a spiritual world, is science able to explain it? Yes or no? No, because the spiritual world is beyond the realm of our physical world. Okay, secondly, science is limited to watching, measuring, and doing experiments based on things in the physical world. Okay, it means that they can only study what they can observe, right? Science can only study what they can observe. What they can't observe, they cannot study. So that's why some atheistic scientists have come out to claim that whatever that they cannot observe means they are not real. Okay, they put forth a statement saying that whatever they cannot observe, they are not real. Do you think it's true? Do you think the statement is true? Whatever that you cannot observe must therefore be unreal. Okay, let's do an illustration, shall we? Okay, come, raise your hand for these questions. How many of you believe that aliens exist? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many of you believe that aliens do not exist? How many of you are waiting for dinner? Okay, for those of you, right, who thinks that there are no aliens, or a couple of you raise our hand. For those of you who did not raise our hand, okay, my question is, how can you be sure that there are no aliens? How can you be sure? Okay, maybe your reasoning is, for all of human history, we have never seen a life form beyond Earth, right? And therefore, there is no alien. Maybe, right? That's your reasoning. Okay, but let me ask you, is the statement there is no alien, is the statement there is no alien a scientific statement? Is it a scientific statement? How can you be sure that there is no alien if you really want to prove that there is really no alien? How do you prove? How do you prove? Anybody? Marcus, how do you prove? Exactly. Not galaxy, but universe, right? In order to prove that there is no alien, you will have to comb through the entire universe, right? You cannot just be guardian of a galaxy, it's guardian of the universe, right? So you have to comb through the entire universe, making sure there is no alien before you can say with 100% confident that, yes, science has proven that there is no alien. Okay, otherwise, the only reasonable position that you can adopt is there is a possibility that aliens are out there in space. Are you still with me? Can you understand, huh? Okay, now I need you all to apply the logic to the main question. Okay, so main cause. Some scientists, once again scientists, have claimed that there is no God. Is this a scientific statement? Okay, I give you 1 minute. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, discuss with your neighbor. Is it a scientific statement? Okay, starting from now. Okay, 20 more seconds, 20 more seconds. Okay, 10 more seconds. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so there is no God. Is this a scientific statement? No, right? I think you guys can appreciate that, right? Okay, because very simple, right? Very simple. If science is limited to our physical world, okay, and we are not able to build any instruments to observe the spiritual world, then how can those scientists know for sure that God and the spiritual world does not exist? How can they be sure? Right? Which is why when you hear scientists coming out to say that there is no God, guys, understand this. They are not being a scientist they are not being a scientist by saying that. They are being a preacher. Can you understand? They are not being a scientist. They are not making a scientific comment. They are making a religious comment. When scientists come out to say that there is no God, because based on the limits of science, there is no way that you can say with certainty that there is no God. Okay, all of you are secondary school and JC and polytechnic, right, tertiary education, you can understand this. You don't need a PhD, right? Right, of course, if you were to research online to the credits of many atheists, okay, they have adjusted their position, right? If you were to read some of their articles, right, they no longer say there is no God, right? They no longer say, maybe a couple of them still say that, but most atheists don't say that. Right, so instead of saying there is no God, they now say there is no evidence for the existence of God. Okay, for example, Neil deGrasse Tyson, you guys know him, right? Right, he once said this in an interview. Right, so Tyson said, I look at disasters that afflict Earth and life on Earth. Volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, disease, pestilence, congenital birth defects. You look at this list of ways that life is made miserable on Earth by natural causes, and I just ask, how do you deal with that? I have no problem if, as we probe the origin of things, universe, we bump into the bearded man. That's God. If that shows up, we good to go, okay? Not a problem. There's just no evidence of it. Okay, this sounds like a very powerful argument, right? And someone is Neil deGrasse Tyson. Okay, but if you think about it, what Tyson is really doing here is he's just describing what is going on in the physical world, right? All these things are happening in the physical world, right? If there is really a spiritual world, then you will not be able to find any evidence just by understanding the physical world. Let me say that one more time. If there is really a spiritual world, you will not be able to understand it just by understanding the physical world. So, science and faith are not incompatible, guys, right? Science and faith, they are not incompatible, right? Okay, science and faith, in fact, they are simply explaining two different things. Okay, let me conclude this point real quick. Okay? And it's heavy. Okay, there are many topics that we can talk about when it comes to science versus faith, right? Maybe some of you have heard of evolution, right? Big Bang Theory, okay, not the TV show, right? You maybe have even heard of multiverse hypothesis. It's not a Marvel concept, by the way, guys. Multiverse is not a Marvel concept, right? Maybe you heard of those things. Okay, those are interesting topics. If you want, we can talk after this. Okay, but I think what's important for us is that even before we explore all these topics, we need to be on a correct starting point, right? We need to be at a correct starting point to recognize the limitations of science. Okay, science is limited to our physical world. Okay, but now the question is turned on us, right? Turned on us Christians, right? They turn back at us. How then do Christians know that the spiritual world exists? Okay, how can we be sure that the spiritual world exists? So the final point is this. Okay, number 3. Okay, consider arguments for the existence of God. Okay, I use the word arguments instead of evidence. Okay, because even as Christians, I don't think we are able to give 100% convincing proof. Okay, I don't think we can able to give 100% slam dunk convincing proof. Okay, but as Christians, we do have a few strong arguments, okay, to show that our belief in existence of God is a logical one. Okay, some of you might remember last year I talked about the moral argument for the existence of God. Okay, maybe it's somewhere in your conscience. Okay, and today I thought I would just focus on one more argument for the existence of God. Okay, and since we're on the topic of science, okay, let's talk about the teleological argument. Okay, teleological. Have you heard of this before? Teleological, or otherwise known as the watchmaker analogy. Okay, a Sec 2 boy texted me recently, tell me about watchmaker analogy. Okay, and the watchmaker analogy usually is in a story form, in a simple story form. A man is walking on the beach, right? He's strolling on the beach, and he sees a pocket watch lying on the sand. Right? It's a watch that he has never seen before. So he picks up the watch, examines it, okay, and he realizes that it's made mostly of metal, and the mechanism look really complicated. Okay, and because of the complexity of the watch, he then concludes that somebody must have skillfully designed the watch and left it there. Okay, it did not come about naturally by chance. Okay, because on the beach you can see rocks, sand, you can see seaweed. Okay, but seeing this watch, okay, naturally the guy concluded that somebody must have designed it and left it there. It is not part of the beach. Okay, and likewise, if you think that the watch is complex, okay, I don't think any one of us can make a watch from scratch. Okay, if you think that the watches that we wear are complex, our physical universe is exponentially much more complex. Okay, there's an expression. Okay, the universe is balanced on the razor's edge for life to exist. Okay, the universe is balanced on the razor's edge, the edge of a knife. Okay, for life to exist. Okay, this means that the universe and our Earth, okay, are perfectly maintained, okay, for life to exist. Okay, what is the percentage of oxygen in the atmosphere? Huh? You all should know this, right? What's the percentage of oxygen in the atmosphere? 23, I think. It's not my script. It's off. I'm talking off my script. I think it's 23%. Okay, somebody can correct me later. Okay, do you know that a slight change in the composition of oxygen in the atmosphere, just a slight change, a bit more, a bit less, and all life on Earth will cease to exist? Okay, if there's a slight change to the distance between the Earth from the Sun, the Earth will either become too hot or too cold, and all life on Earth will cease to exist. Okay, that's just how precise, right, our universe is, how precise the position our universe is at. Okay, another example of complexity in our physical universe, okay, is DNA, okay, deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, some of you have studied this, right? Okay, within the cells of every living thing, that's all of us living thing, okay, contains a massive amount of information, okay, called the DNA. Okay, and DNA is basically a protein, right? Protein strand is a chemical code that can store massive amount of information. Okay, to help you appreciate DNA, do you know that 1 gram of DNA, how to show 1 gram? 1 gram of DNA can contain 215 million gigabytes of information. 215 million gigabytes of information. Okay, that's roughly all the data stored on the internet right now. Okay, or maybe for some of you who watch Netflix, 1 gram of DNA can store 71 million movies in high definition. 1 gram can store 71 million movies in high definition. And what is the purpose of DNA? Okay, it contains all the genetic information necessary to create all the proteins needed, okay, upon our bodies are built from. It means that it contains all the information needed to move a cell, a ball of cells, into a full-grown living organism, a plant, dog, or a human being. Right? It's just how intriguing and complex our physical universe is, right down to the cellular level. Now, as for all of us science students, when we observe our physical universe, how do you explain the complexity that we observe around us? How do you explain? Right? Why are things so precise? One way to explain this is that everything happened by chance, right? Everything happening by chance. Particles like atoms, they move around, and they collide with each other, right, for millions of years. Just keep moving around for millions of years, right? Until they eventually hit the right position and right combination, and they form the planets, stars that we see today. Where do living organisms come about? One possibility is the same, that atoms like oxygen, hydrogen, and carbon, they move around and collide randomly, right, for millions of years, keep colliding, before eventually forming the first amino acid. Right? The amino acid then continue to collide with one another for another millions of years. Right? Before they form the first protein, and the protein collide with one another by chance, they form the first DNA, and the DNA then directs the development for the first living cell. Okay, so one way to explain this is that everything happened by chance over millions of years. Okay, that's one possibility, right? It happens by chance. Okay, in fact, do you know that science has concluded that our physical universe has a beginning? It began at some point. It means our universe is not eternal. Yes, it began at some point in time. Okay, and not just does our physical universe has a distinct beginning. Okay, before it came to being, okay, there was nothing. This is by scientists. They say that before the universe came to existence, there was nothing. So the question is, right? Is it possible that something can come out from nothing? This one we can talk more. Right, so there's one possibility, right? That something came out from nothing and things just formed randomly by chance, by random collision. There's one possible explanation. Another possible explanation is that someone incredibly powerful, intelligent, has designed and created our physical universe. Okay, he created things out from nothing. And he organized everything in the universe in an orderly fashion. Okay, I know some people might say that you cannot prove scientifically that there is an intelligent designer who created the world. Right? You can't prove scientifically. That's true. But similarly, one cannot prove scientifically that the universe came about by chance. Right? They both are possibilities. Okay, the most important question that you need to ask is that, considering all the scientific discovery, which is the best explanation? How many ask a neighbor, which is the best explanation? Right, so is it by chance or is it by someone? Okay, can I invite the worship team up? Okay, let me conclude. I know it's a heavy topic, but let me conclude with a quote by Dr. Anthony Flew. Okay, Anthony Flew was one of the most well-known and accomplished atheists. Okay, and towards the end of his life, Anthony Flew, he renounced atheism. For most part of his life, he was an atheist, but at 81 years old, he became a Christian. Okay, and he even wrote a book called "There Is a God." Okay, and he said this: I now believe that there is a God. I now think it, referring to evidence, does point to a creative intelligence almost entirely because of the DNA investigation. Right? We talked about the DNA just now. What I think the DNA material has done is that it has shown, by the almost unbelievable complexity of the arrangements which are needed to produce life, that intelligence must have been involved in getting these extraordinarily diverse elements to work together. Okay, and that's an atheist for 80 years of his life. Towards the end, when he considered the evidence, and he concluded, okay, surely there must be an intelligent being. Okay, today I have not quoted a single Bible verse like what I usually do. Okay, because I think for the first message of this series, I think I would like all of us to start off with the right framework, right? To look at God, the right framework to look at God and science. Okay, if we start off from the position because the Bible says so, okay, we will be stuck in an infinite loop, right? How do you know God is real? Because the Bible says so. How do you know the Bible is real? Because it's from God. How do you know God is real? Because the Bible says so. We're stuck in an infinite loop. So I've chosen not to start from the biblical point of view. Okay, next week we'll talk about who wrote the Bible. Okay, but for now, okay, if there is a God, okay, now that we've talked about the 3 points, if there is a God, we will not be able to find, observe, and communicate with Him with all our scientific efforts. Right? Because we are in the physical world, He or they, gods, are in the spiritual world. Okay, we will not be able to connect with them or Him because science cannot bring us from the physical world into the spiritual world. Okay, but if there is a spiritual world and there is a God, then it is possible for God to cross into our physical world because He created it. Okay, let me say that again. If there is a spiritual world, right, your bigger rectangle in your outline, and there is a God, it is possible for this God to cross into our physical world because He created it. And that is the Christian message. Right? That is the Christian message. That 2,000 years ago, not only did God cross over to our physical world, but He even demonstrated His love for us by dying on the cross. Right? He created us. He's of the spiritual world. But 2,000 years ago, He crossed into our physical world. And He demonstrated His love for us by dying on the cross. So that we might know Him and be given the opportunity to enter into the spiritual world. Can you all see all the link? I hope you can see all the link over here, even as we talk about science and the Christian message. And that is what Easter is all about. God coming into our physical world. Jesus Christ dying on the cross for our sin, so that we might know Him and enter into His world. Okay, so to all our friends who have joined us today, I want to invite you to come back for the rest of this series, okay, to find out more about the difficult questions that people are asking. Okay, at the same time, okay, to our friends, I want to invite you for our Easter service happening on 16th of April. Okay, because that is the greatest news that you have to hear. Okay, finally to my fellow Christians, I want to urge you, it's not encourage you, but I want to urge you to invite your friends, okay, for the rest of this series, FAQ, and for our Easter service. Because if you believe that there is a creator God, then Christianity is no longer a personal preference. Right? It's no longer a personal lifestyle or personal preference. Christianity is the truth. Tell neighbor, it's the truth. Okay, yes, guys, there will be people who will reject the truth, but as Christians, we have the urgency and the responsibility to tell people the truth. Okay, you're not trying to sell a product, right? This will make your life better. You're not trying to sell a product, you're trying to tell them the truth. Okay, and the best thing that you can do for your friends is to invite them to church. Okay, and give them the opportunity to hear the greatest news of all time. Amen? Amen? Come, shall we stand on our feet? Let's close this time.